One thing that we do at Grace Point is when someone is speaking or someone is being vulnerable, we all give them this signal, which means "I love you" in sign language. And youth, if you've been to Grace Point, I bet you know this. When someone is talking and they look up into the crowd, they are just able to see everyone is just there with them, and they're able to see the love that is reflected back at them while they're trying to explain their experience and give them a little insight into their own faith journey.
Okay. What is faith? Faith can be complex and difficult, but it's the foundation of our relationship with God. Having faith in God means that you wholly and completely put your trust in something that's not visible at all times, which can be scary and difficult. I often find it's easy to believe in things that you can see or that you can touch or you can hear, but God's promises to us are not always visible in a traditional sense. Hebrews 11 is often referred to as the Hall of Faith because it showcases several people who put their complete and total faith in God. In Hebrews 11, 8 through 16, Abraham has a steady and unwavering trust in God's promises. When Abraham was called by God to leave his homeland, he wasn't given a clear view of what his new life would look like. He was promised by God that he would have descendants, but he had no definite way of knowing if he would. Abraham had to choose to let go of what was comfortable and known, to walk in blind trust with the hope of something greater. To me, living a life of faith means spending a lot of time in that sort of in-between that Abraham had to. God's promises to us can sometimes mean letting go of our old, comfortable habits and ways of living in order to obey his calls to us. And although this can be intimidating and uncomfortable, this state of vulnerability can ultimately bring us closer to God. In today's world, there's a lot of uncertainty. Whether it be daily life or the world at large, there's so much changing and moving that it can be overwhelming. In my life, I often feel myself getting tied up in daily struggles and challenges, and that can make me feel as though I'm losing sight of the bigger picture. However, God has so much more in store for me than just my daily wins and losses. Hebrews 6:19 says that hope is the anchor of the soul. Throughout the highs and lows, having a steady faith in God's promises can lead you and can guide you. There is a bigger picture to put your faith in, and it's one full of hope and promise. We know God, and we know he has a plan for us. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase." So, throughout every up and down of life or every change in time of uncertainty, I encourage you to remember that God's the anchor of your soul, and that his promise line you can always cling to.
This morning, I'm going to tell a story. It's not a story that I tell lightly because it's one about the hardest seasons of my life. A time where I felt my faith was hanging on by a thread. But it's also a story about how God never let me go even when I felt like letting him go. A while ago, my family received difficult news. My grandma, who is one of the most loving people I know, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. The moment I heard those words, my heart dropped, and questions rushed in. Why would God let this happen? And if he's good, why is she suffering? I'd grown up believing, praying, and trusting God, but in that moment, it all felt shaky. I didn't realize it then, but I was experiencing a real-life test of faith, the kind that Hebrews talks about. Faith in what we do not see. At that moment, what I could see was pain, fear, and loss. What I couldn't was God's bigger plan and his presence in the middle of it. Like Abraham being called to go without knowing where, I was being called to trust without having all the answers. And honestly, I resisted. I stopped reading my Bible, I prayed less, and though I came to church, my heart wasn't in it. But God didn't let me go. Hebrews 11 reminds us that the great heroes of faith kept going because they trusted in God's promises. For me, God sent friends to remind me of his promises when I had forgotten them. They noticed my quietness. They sent me messages saying, "We're praying for you." They invited me to hang out even when I wanted to isolate myself. It was at camp when I felt God's presence in a way that I hadn't in a long time. During one of the evening worship sessions, we sang a song about surrendering everything to him. As I stood there, the words hit me hard. You never let go in every high and every low. I realized that even in my anger and doubt, God had never left my side. He was walking He was walking with me through my pain, not watching from a distance. Hebrews 11 reminds us that people of faith lived as foreigners and strangers on earth, longing for God's better kingdom. That means life here will have valleys, but those valleys aren't the destination. Faith doesn't mean we will always have answers. It means keep walking, trusting that God sees the full story when we only see one chapter. If you are in a season where faith feels hard, remember this: we are called to trust in what we do not see. God may be leading you somewhere better, even if right now it feels like you're walking through uncertainty. And if your faith is steady right now, then maybe you're meant to be that friend, that encourager, who holds up someone else's faith until they can stand again. Now, with my grandma, though we were distraught and sad, we were given hope. 6 months later, after treatment, a new scan of her tumor showed that it had shrunk so tiny that the MRI couldn't pick it up. The best possible outcome we have ever hoped for, and we continue to pray that it continues to work.